Ahoy there, mateys! We are going to do fractions and decimals on a number line, and you're going to love it because you love fractions and decimals. So basically, we've covered integers, we've covered number lines. Now we're going to toss some fractions and decimals onto the number lines. I think most of you will probably have more of a trouble with fractions and decimals than you will with the actual number line part of it. So if you need some help, especially with the fractions and the decimals part, make sure to get some help from me or Mrs. Rude this week. So let's jump right into this. Let me shrink myself down. There we go. So to find an integer that is between these two numbers, so like if you had 1 and 3 on a number line, it'd be super easy to see that 2 is the only integer that's in between 1 and 3. All right, what if you have like -1 and 5 on a number line? What is an integer that's between -1 and 5? Yeah, so the integers are like zeros between -1 and 5. It's bigger than -1 and it's not -1. And then 1, 2, 3, and 4. As soon as you hit 5, it's no longer between, it's now 5. And then there you go. So now it's a little trickier. These are negative numbers. What is an integer between -7 and -4? Yes, like -6 or -5 are the only two integers that are between those two numbers, not including -7 and -4. So -8, -5, you could have -7 or -6. Between -2 and 0, what is an integer between -2 and 0? -1 is the only integer between -2 and 0. And then between 0 and 5, you could have 1, 2, 3, or 4. So some of your problems will have you find points between integers. But we're also going to be dealing with fractions and decimals. So you might have a question like this. What is a fraction that's between a sixth and a half? Oh my goodness, that's difficult. What do I do? Well, a sample answer is 1/4. Now, a way to get this is you can convert the, let's say the 1/6 and the 1/2. You can convert them both to 12ths if you want. So like that 1/6 is 2/12. The 1/2 is 6/12. So any of those in between 2/12 and 6/12, like 3/12, which is a fourth, by the way, if you simplify it. So any of those would work. Or you could just turn the half into 3/6. So you could have 1/6 and 3/6, and then 2/6 would be right in between. And 2/6 is the same as a third. So getting a common denominator is a great way to find fractions that are between two fractions, especially if their denominators are different, like in this case, 6 and 2. Okay, what is a sample, a fraction, what's a fraction that's in between -1.5 and -1 1/4? Okay, so all the ones that I listed on the Edpuzzle there, the only one that works is -1 3/8. And again, if you turn those both into 8s, so like -1.5 is -1 4/8, -1 1/4 is -1 2/8, then -1 3/8 is right in between the -2 and the -4. Okay, so I'm hoping this is making a little more sense. Common denominators will be your friends. And then this one, I'm just for sake of time, I'm going to jump through. There's a sample answer of an integer that's between -1/3 and -1. So if you need some help with the fractions, that's one thing. If you need some help knowing where they are in a number line, that's a whole different question. So if you're getting help, make sure to clarify as like, oh, I need help with fractions, or I need help understanding where this fits on a number line. All right, so here, graph each number and its opposite. First of all, what is the opposite of 3/4? Yeah, -3/4. So when you graph it, you're going to have 0, probably right in the middle. And then it's good to just number it by fourths. If you're going to have to put 3/4 on there, put 1/4, 2/4, which is a half, 3/4, and then 4/4, which is 1, and then 1 and 1/4, and so on. So 3/4 would be right there. You just put a dot right on 3/4. You don't have to estimate where it is between 0 and 1. And then -3/4 is just that same distance away from 0 on the opposite side of the number line. Okay, we also have decimals. So decimals, if you're going to graph -1.6 and its opposite, what is the opposite of -1.6? Yeah, 1.6. So when you graph that, again, I'd put 0 right in the middle. But then instead of just putting like 1 and then 2 and then estimating where 1.6 is, just number it by like 0.2 or number it by 0.4 like they did here. Number it by something that's going to land right on 1.6, and then you don't have to do any guessing. So like this first one's 0.4, 0.8, 1.2, and then there's 1.6. And then you'd number the negatives the same way. So whatever scale you're using on the right-hand side of 0, use that same scale on the left-hand side of 0. And there's our negative 1.6. Boom, done. There we go. So now, here's what I want you to do. Get out, hopefully, some scratch paper or a whiteboard, and I want you to try to graph and compare negative 1/2 and negative 3/4. So compare negative 1/2 and negative 3/4, preferably by graphing them. All right, so if you graphed it correctly, you would see that negative 1/2 is to the right of negative 3/4, because negative 1/2 is the same as negative 2/4, by the way. So negative 1/2 is actually bigger than negative 3/4. All right, now compare these two, negative 4 and 5/6 and negative 4 and 1/6. So again, if you were to, I never went through all the answers on that other one apparently. So if you're to graph these ones again correctly, and it's good to just go by 1/6 each time since you're putting sixths on here. So negative 4 and 1/6 to be here, and then because they're negatives, it's the numbers are increasing as it's going to the left, even though they're actually getting smaller. So negative 4 and 5/6 is smaller than negative 4 and 1/6 because it is to the left on the number line. Oh, let me click through those answers too. There we go. So again, that's why those answers further to the right is bigger, further to the left is smaller. And that's true whether they're fractions, decimals, or whole numbers. Okay, so try these ones. Compare negative 3.08 and negative 3.8. Okay, hopefully you remember that negative 3.8 is like negative 3.80. So this is like 3 and 800ths. This is 3 and 80 but they're both negatives. So when you're graphing them, it's getting further from 0 as you go to the left. So negative 3.08 is like here. Negative 3.80 is like here. Therefore, negative 3.08 is bigger than negative 3.8 because it's to the right on the number line. And then we have a situation here. A Chinook wind is a warm mountain wind that can cause rapid temperature changes. The table shows 3 of the greatest temperature drops ever recorded after a Chinook wind occurred. On which date did the temperature drop the fastest? All right, so just looking at that, some of you might be able to do this like in your head, but if not, it's good, again, to put these on a number line. So negative 5/8 is between 0 and negative 1. Negative 2 and 1/5 is just past negative 2 on the number line. And then negative 3 and 1/10 is past negative 3 on the number line, making it the furthest to the left, meaning it's the one that dropped the fastest. It's the biggest negative number. Okay, it's the smallest number on here, but it's the biggest change from 0. So there we go, January 10th, 1911. It's quite a while ago. And the final question I want you to think about. If you have a tough time answering this one, even with a number line, that means you should get some help from me or see Mrs. Root in the ASC, especially if the help you need is with fractions and not necessarily in the number line. So which is greater, negative 1 2/5 or negative 1 3/4? Okay, so I'm going to explain this in 2 ways. One is if you graph it, you'll see that negative 1 2/5 is further to the right on the number line, therefore it's greater. Now you can also turn fifths and fourths into 20ths. So negative 2/5, when you multiply by 4/4, gives you negative 1 8/20. When you multiply the negative 1 3/4 by 5/5, at least the 3/4 part, you get negative 1 15/20. So you're comparing those two and you'll see, oh, well, the negative 1 8/20 is further to the right because it's not as negative, therefore it is greater. Okay, so this is what you'll be doing. Some of you are like, it's going to be painful because there's fractions and there's decimals and they're negative and it's blah. Okay, don't worry. Just get some help if you need some help. Make sure to ask questions if you run into some trouble, and I will see you during our next live session. Arr!